Mhm. 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 La.
Hola, buenos días a todos. Son las... Se me ha olvidado poner el tweet y he abierto Twitter para ponerlo y se me ha olvidado porque mira el móvil. buenos días Sinistro, buenos días El Brillo, buenos días Samantha Runner, buenos días Rubén, buen día, llego tarde, llegas tarde, llego tarde, no llego tarde, buen día, buenos días, buenos días. Buenos días amantes del quechu y del amor, buenos días, cuando zarpa el amor. ¿Podemos ver que los rinos han caído en la desesperación de jugar la Ley Lane of Anticipation? Yo diría que no, ¿no? O sea, se ha hecho trofeo hasta Doomwake. Es decir, ¿tú eres de la Verdunch de la derecha o de la izquierda? Verdunch, ¿qué coño es Verdunch? Con V. Devoradores de fifes. 23.000 seguidores. ¿Qué?
Somos las Verduns y hoy estamos en el Museo del Prado.
Os vamos a dar 3 tips para que os conservéis como una obra de arte.
El primero, oculta tu rostro, bebé, que no te dé el sol. Además, así evitarás que los envidiosos te observen.
Incognitadas. Que no me dé el sol. Achichadas, bebé. Segundo, mantenerse activa es clave. Saca un hueco para hacerte una caminatita. Vete de compras y mueve ese cuerpazo. Y nunca cojas el ascensor. Siempre vete por las escaleras, Cari. Así mueves el culo y enseñas tu outfit.
Y tercero, descansa lo suficiente. Es muy duro estar sirviendo todo el día.
La jornada, bebé. Coach, despierta, que tenemos que acabar el vídeo. Va.
Creo que 10 minutitos, 23 expulsiones, 10 minutitos de... Para que te lo pienses. Para que te lo pienses el brillo, más que nada, ¿eh? Más que nada para que te lo pienses. Las tonterías que vienes aquí a decir, para que las veamos todos. Vamos, tiene cojones. Tiene cojones. Buenos días. El mundo sigue, eso es, sí. No tengo 15 años, correcto. Nuestro público no es el público de Auronplay, el Rubius y de Gref. ¿Qué podemos hacer? ¿Qué podemos hacer? ¿Qué podemos hacer si la gente que está aquí ya tenemos por lo menos 10 días cotizados a la seguridad social? Por eso eres pobre, claro. Sí, porque no digo... ¡Ah, increíble! Y descansa, bebé. Pero ¿cómo dice descansa, bebé? Pero si tengo ya 33 años. Descansa, bebé, dice. ¿Y qué? Es que me mato. Pero ¿cómo ha dicho descansa, bebé? ¿Pero que están locos? ¿Pero de dónde han salido estas? Que han dicho descansa, bebé, y han escrito una B y otra B y se han ahorrado las dos vocales. La verdad que es que también tiene que ser agotador estar haciendo eso todo el puto día. Tiene que ser, vamos, la puta hostia. Bueno. ¿Qué me he perdido? Ay, Colomino, claro. Llegas aquí, llegas tarde a clase. Ponte al final de la clase. Ponte al final de la clase. Ponte al final de la clase y no molestes. Por favor. Al final de la clase y no molestes. A la última fila, claro. Topejo psicópata, hombre. Yo creo que no ha sido muy topejo psicópata. Ha sido bastante accurate. Bueno, a lo que vamos. A la realidad. La realidad. Eh, ¿Esto qué? A ver, 5-0 en una liga no es nada, no sé qué. Lo importante es este fin de... Ok, ok a todo, ok a todo. Ok a todo. Este fin de challenge, no sé qué. Volverá a ganar Triton Boy con azul
Buenos
roja.
días, Nerf de Rhinos o gana siguiente GP.
Buenos días, Nerf the Rhinos o gana el siguiente GP. De hecho, hay un GP en Praga dentro de 11 días, 12 días, 11, 12, 11, 12, ¿cuándo? ¿Cuándo es? LMS Praga, LMS Praga. Y esto es Modern, ¿no? O triplazo un día más. Esto me suena que es Modern. Modern, lo pone ahí. Gran Open Qualifier Modern. Correcto, aquí está. Pues este es el... Este es el GP, ¿no? ¿Puede ser que lo gane? Uf. No, yo creo que no. Pero yo creo que sí que va a haber rinos en... Podríamos hacer la contraria. La de... ¿Cuántos mazos de cascada va a haber en el LMS de Praga? Esa la podríamos hacer. No, no. Top, top. Sí, sí, claro, en el top, en el top. Sí, 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 en el top 8. Perdón, perdón. Igual pensáis que decía en el metajuego, perdón. En el top 8, 3. 3. Joder, 3 son muchas, eh. Envíame mensajes. ¿Esto qué mierda es? Hay que dejar salir en el Boy Poison siempre. La panda es subnormales. Me gusta. Voy a ponerlo. Coño, ha muerto. Ha muerto Naibot. Maten. Buenos días. Dustape. Falta el 0. Bueno, entonces quito el 8. La electrobalance la contamos como cascada. Cascada. Mira, cascada. Cascada es una keyword de un juego que se llama Magic el Encuentro. Y significa, cuando tú lanzas este hechizo, exilia cartas del todo de tu biblioteca hasta que tú exilias un Nolan Card con un coste de mana convertido menor de el coste de mana de ese hechizo. Tú puedes lanzar esa carta sin pagar su coste de mana y ya está, sin pagar ese mana value, ¿no? Entonces, electrodominancia. La electrodominancia cuenta. No sé, a ver, vamos a ver. Electrodominancia. A ver. A ver. Dios, el Star Wars, tío. Me tiene atrapado, Entonces, la electrodominancia. La electrodominancia cuenta. A ver, yo clico aquí. Electrodominancia hace X daños a cualquier objetivo. Tú puedes lanzar una carta con coste de maná de X o menos de tu mano sin pagar su coste de maná. Yo diría que aquí la palabra cascade no sale. ¿Hay alguien en el chat que me pueda confirmar si la palabra cascade sale en la carta electrodominance? ¿No sale? Vale, perfecto. Nada, solo para confirmarlo. Vale, perfecto. Entonces, a la pregunta de MR Ductape, la electrobalance la contamos como cascada. La respuesta es, después de haber chequeado lo que hace la electrodominance, la respuesta es no. Vale, seguimos. Ferre ha dicho que 1. Ferrero Blue, 1. ¿Quién más ha dicho algo? Nada, ¿no? Hasta aquí. Rubén Damenuna. Rubén. Nahasha Faldrick. Dios. Yo creo que va a haber. Yo creo que. Vamos. Mazos de cascada. O sea, Livinen y Rhinos. Voy a poner aquí. Pa. Livinen ya está en su end. Bueno, Menino Ney, ¿no? Menino Ney hizo. El otro día trofeito. ¿Cómo? ¿Cómo? No, 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 ¿qué coño? Está currando esta mañana, pero no, seguro, vamos. Vale. Aquí, ¿dónde está? Bastida. Estaba por aquí, puede ser. Rainmaker 3. A ver, Rainmaker 3. A ver. Las Living End. Las Living End están fuera. Esto es lo que dice Living End de. Esto es lo que dice Living End de todo esto. Y 4 lane para el mirror, claro. Y estos son los rinocerontes, ¿no? Los rinocerontes de Oscar Franco, ¿eh? Te pegan una cornada en un momento, ¿eh? Parece que han subido los Palpatine. Pero Ferré, que eres ahora experto en Star Wars. Pero fijarse en unos días después de los bans que la mayoría de gente se ha quitado el SIDE contra los mazos de cascada, ¿de qué vale? Pero sí, precisamente el tema está en que todo el mundo sigue jugando cascada, ¿no? O sea, yo me meto en Twitter, y todo el mundo quiere seguir rompiendo las cascadas. Yo te digo lo que yo veo en Twitter, ¿eh? Yo me veo en Twitter y veo el aspirinas. Vamos a probar rinos con blanco, Dunway. Vamos a probar rinos con blanco y ley lines. Togore, vamos a probar Living In con blanco. El menos esquizofrénico de mis amigos. Creo que ahora la Glimpse of Tomorrow es buena baraja. No sé. Hombre, Topper, soy experto en Star Wars, en Lorcana, en Magic, en One Piece, en Tute, Mus y en Subasta. Hombre, pues siendo tan experto, no sé cómo es posible que me hagas ir a tu casa luego esta tarde para que te compre el billete de avión para Nápoles cuando ya te he pasado las fechas y el enlace. No entiendo cómo, siendo tan experto, luego tengo que ir yo esta tarde a comprarte un billete de avión. No lo entiendo. Y eso que eres experto. Vale. Es que los billetes no son foil. Pero si es alguno de las anteriores, pues es cierto, no es. No pone cascade, es cierto. Es cierto, MR Duttape. Es cierto. Bueno, vamos a ver qué ha pasado por aquí. Los 5 ceros, ¿estos qué? Con finales of Devastation para las morapollas, con los libros de cocina. Aquí van a pasar cosas, yo creo. Vamos a mirar. Exclamación Brainstorm. Why not? Vale, esto es unas Rhinos. Muy bien. Snackcaster. La verdad que. Hacía tiempo que no veía las 4 color con los Halfling, ¿eh? La verdad. Gabanazi. La mezcla perfecta entre las dos cosas que más odio: los gabachos y los nazis. Las barajas estas, tío, de Gorios quieren decirme cosas, pero la realidad es que no me dice nada, finalmente. Me las quieren decir, pero Green White Melforks. No, Green Blue Melforks. Joder, es que esto. Esto sí. No lleva mucho Green, bueno, lleva 4 Cenote Scout, ¿no? Que ya son 4 cartas más verdes de las que esperaba ver en cualquier momento. Otra baraja de Liliana de Gilpack, Grenan Six, los orcos. La verdad que la Zoo, ¿cómo están reventando? Yaumos, vale. Otra Cam. Esto. ¿Esto qué es exactamente? Luego normal que veas a la peña que se hace 5-0, si solamente hay listas de mierda. A ver. Control F. ¿Cómo era tu usuario, Bastida? ¿Tu usuario era Bastida? Pues ningún 5-0, Bastida. ¿Vas al Arcanis? Yo voy a ir al Arcanis, por si quieres seguir tomando notas. Igual aquí sale algún día tu nombre. Es que esta lista es. Es todo lo que prometí destruir, Ojo, Travelport con verde, ¿pero esto qué es? Ese caldero de base no tiene sentido. Bueno, si esperan muchísima Yawmoth y muchísima Livinen, puedo llegar a medio comprarlo. No hubo una época en la que se jugaba. En la que se jugaba. Lo voy a decir, lo voy a decir, lo voy a decir. Las limusinas de base. Al Licensed Gearse. No, no, pero escucha, que es que no es solo eso. Que es que no sé, claro, igual no os habéis fijado. Que es que lleva uno de base. Lleva uno de base, pero es que lleva otro de banquilla. Que no sé si lo habéis visto. que. Hay gente consumiendo. Hay gente consumiendo mercancía, ¿eh? No sabía que la MagicCon de Ámsterdam ya se había celebrado. Otra Zone. Hardenet Scales. Mono Red. Madre mía, Mono Red. Yes. Este mazo me mola, macho. ¿Creéis que se lo podré pedir a alguien para el Arcanis? Porque es que yo de aquí tengo 0 cartas. Tengo las 4 Giver, los 3 Tibar Stan, las Shocklands, las básicas, que no son nevadas, y el Light of the Hydra de la... Igual puedo poner 10 cartas de la 75. Bueno, ya veré qué hago con mi vida. Etazacer. Un Settle Marinier. Yes. N-Code en 5-0. U-Black. Me gustan las U-Black que no son U-Black y que son Grixis. Manqueque 5-0. ¿Y las Urborg estas qué? ¿El mazo este es bueno o es todo humo? Luego al final de los torneos como que se vienen abajo, ¿no? Claro, les toca jugar ya contra gente con mazos buenos y que sabe jugar y como que va, como que de repente pierden. Pero como que habían aguantado bien, ¿no? Estos mazos. Tengo que jugar esto en el Arcanis, Mr. Dustape. Juega este mazo que es fácil. Juega Escape Shift Topper. Pero es que Escape Shift es el mazo de Ballester. No me gustaría mancillar ese mazo, macho. Topper, juégate la Gorgios, que está rotísima y es brainless. Si el problema de la Gorios es que no creo que nadie me la pueda dejar. Son cartas muy raras. ¿Qué te falta, Topper? Pues toda la baraja. Un saludo. ¿Qué me falta de la esta? Pues a ver. Superchería, superchería. A ver, ¿qué me falta? Tengo 2 toques de estos firmados por Marta Nael. 2 Touch of the Spirit Realm firmados por Marta Nael. Un Godless. una isla, el Head de Mace, la llanura, el Meticulous Archive, tengo 3 cartas, Otaguara 4, Shadowway 5, 6, 7. Bueno, esta no la tengo porque al jugador al que se las compré a la tienda. Profesional. Tienda profesional a las que se las compré. Aún no me los ha entregado. Aún no me los ha entregado. No voy a dar nombres. No voy a dar nombres de a qué tienda se compró. A ver. No voy a dar nombres. No voy a dar nombres. Pero no me han llegado. No me han llegado estas cartas. Estas 8 cartas no me han llegado. Supongo que será casualidad. Claro. Viviendo a 100 metros como vivimos. Vivimos a 100 metros. Claro. Y es raro, porque valen prácticamente lo mismo estas cartas. Vamos, prácticamente. Y tengo que ir a su casa a comprarle un billete de avión. Eso es. ¿Y la otra qué? La otra... nada, está perfecto. Está todo perfecto. No estamos agobiados. No, estamos bien. Estamos bien. Estoy tranquilo. Estoy tranquilo. No pasa nada. Hay que comprar cajas de Star Wars Unlimited. Me gustaría terminar primero con esto. La semana que viene tengo reunión con los de Star Wars. Que esta semana se me complicaba muchísimo. Así que lo hemos movido para la semana que viene. Los bobas, ¿cómo están? Ojo, los bobas. Se han enviado, Se han enviado, los bobas. 23.99. Enviado ayer a las 4:01. Y el otro boba enviado ayer a las 18:13. $23.90 los bobas. ¿Cómo van los bobas ahora? Pues... yo pillé 3 Darth Vader en foil en español y 2 de los 3 me dicen que no los tienen. Ya es casualidad. Joder, Faco. Es que he tenido mala suerte, macho. Qué casualidad, el Darth Vader. El Darth Vader que prácticamente no ha subido. El Darth Vader, De 27 a 60. Prácticamente no ha subido. Tía, tío. Qué locura, tío. Qué auténtica locura. Y... y os digo una cosa. No he firmado nada, no me han pagado los de Star Wars, no me pagan Modé, no me paga absolutamente nadie. Star Wars es un juegazo. Qué locura. Qué locura. O sea, ¿sabes eso de... joder, es que no sé si este juego renta porque es pura especulación o porque el juego es brutal? Aquí el juego es brutal. No tengo ni idea de lo que si será especulación, no tengo ni idea. No tengo ni idea, pero el juego es demencial. Entro y se dice, habla de Star Wars. He estado sin hablar de Star Wars hasta ahora mismo. Hasta ahora mismo, ¿eh? No he dicho absolutamente nada de Star Wars. Y ha sido porque 4 cajas me llegan mañana. Que te reviento. ¡Te reviento! Como te abra... Te compro... ¿Qué me falta? Te compro... Me falta un window. Te compro un window. Rasolo. Me falta un window. Necesito un window. Window. Mace window. Me falta un window de estos. Es bueno este bicho, eh. Vaya, claro, 7. 7. 7 son muchos. Ay, pero como llegue. Ay, como llegue. Bueno. ¿Y esto qué son? 20 euros de esto qué es? Los 4 preachers. Preacher. Preacher. Que sería un preacher también. No sé si no lo habéis visto, tenéis que verla. Bueno, vale, ¿por dónde íbamos? Estábamos viendo... Ah, me estabais convenciendo de que tenía que jugar esto en el Arcanis. ¿Pero esto es bueno, en serio? O sea, yo me fío de vosotros. Yo no tengo ni idea de Modern, ya sabéis. Nadie me dice nada de la puta esta. De la Monoblack Coffers. Estamos en la B. Bueno, ya veré si la juego. Tengo dudas. El tema de esto es que para ganar es complicado, ¿no? O sea, ¿cómo gana este mazo? Es que no sé ni cómo puede ganar este mazo. No sé. Bueno. Ragavan, no sé qué, territorio al cabo, tal. Una mierda. Siguiente. 1000. Fracture Sanity. Pero... O sea, ¿esta es la demo de Horizons 2? Espero que sea la demo de Horizons 2. Me he caído. No me he caído. Y si es la demo de Horizons 2, vale. Estaban entrando los 7 males. Tasaje de un Lauter, no sé qué, tal. Vale, perfecto. Vale. Pues hasta aquí los mazos de moda. En los preliminares, ¿qué? ¿Ha ocurrido algo? 27 player, 4-0, 4-0, un amuletos, 61 cartas, un explore. Está bien el juego de Star Wars. A mí me ha parecido un juegazo. Topper, si tuvieras que comprar un producto de Modern Horizon 3, ¿cuál comprarías? Depende del tipo de jugador que seas, pero yo qué sé. Si es por gamblear, una puta Collector. Van a valer los Eldracis, esos Soulframe. No se sabe ni cuánto dinero va a valer. Con el Karn puedes pillar las cosas del SIDE. Que no me había cargado el chat, me está cargando todo ahora. Está bien en Star Wars, está... Para mí, pepino, ¿eh? Para mí, pepino, ¿eh? El Star Wars. O sea... Repito. Yo quería jugar a Star Wars. Entonces yo estoy ya condicionado con que yo quería jugar a Star Wars. De hecho tenía miedo de que fuese un juego de mierda. Y digo, joder, tío, quiero jugar al puto Star Wars. Pero es que... Es que va a ser un juego de mierda como el puto One Piece o el Lorcana. Más es que probé el Lorcana y dije, pero esto qué mierda es, tío. Pero esto qué mierda es. Digo, es que como... Es que me la estaba viendo, ¿eh? Me la estaba viendo con Star Wars. Es que me la estaba viendo, digo... Va a ser un juego de mierda. Y voy a tener que jugar por la puta licencia, tío. Porque es que es Star Wars y quiero jugar a Star Wars. Y no, tío, es que es un juegazo. Es que... O sea, cuando estuve jugando las demos, iba a ganar la partida y me hicieron un centinela. Y yo, perdona, ¿qué es esto? Me pegaron 2 veces y dije, creo que he perdido. Y perdí. Y perdí. Dije, este juego es una locura. Este juego, o sea, me ha parecido un juego bastante guay, ¿eh? Muy guay Star Wars. Muy guay. Vente el sábado mañana 10:30. Pero, o sea, este sábado... Un segundo, centrémonos. Este sábado es el interocio. Topper, ¿cuándo puede ser el mejor momento para pillar las fetch? En pre-order seguro que no. ¿Y qué? Que voy a ver si consigo entradas para el interocio, ¿no? Rasuelo. Yo voy al interocio el domingo. Hay carreras de sacos en torneo. Ya estoy apuntado. Van a flipar los niños. Pero Rasolo, ¿hay sacos para ballenas como nosotros? ¿Cabemos dentro de un saco? ¿Tú y yo? No sé, ¿eh? Saco en cada pierna y vas andando así. Pam, pam, pam. Esa sería la buena, ¿eh? Oh, un saco de esos de la obra, claro. Así sí, ¿eh? De los de Obra Mat. De esos. Vale. Gorio Vengeance. Vale, este mazo sí, pero... Oh, Funky Business. Ah, no, Funky Muninki. Funky Muninki. Casi Funky Business, ¿eh? ¿Y esto qué? Ah, esto UR. UR sí que no juego, vamos. No juego UR. Ni aunque me la dejen así. Toma. Ah, UR. Juega UR. Yawmoth. El problema de Yawmoth es que, como no la he jugado nunca, me la han dejado 2 veces la Yawmoth. Hice 3-1 y 4-0 en Metrópolis. Y con B 0 veces. Gané siempre con el plan beatdown. Mana bicho, bicho, Yawmoth. Me como esto para darle un contador, robo, te mato un blocker. Me como esto, te mato otro blocker, te enchufo. La Yaumos suele ganar así, ¿eh? Suele ganar... Hombre, a ver, yo he jugado a la Yaumos 2 veces en mi vida y te digo, 0 veces combe, porque digo, si es que no sé cómo combo. ¿Qué me las voy a dar aquí de pro? Metrópolis hará construido de Star Wars, va a hacer, pero Metrópolis primero hace drafts para que la gente consiga cartas. La gente aún no tiene... O sea, no hay cartas para todos todavía. Yo creo que tienes que dejar que la gente se haga con las cartas. Creo, vamos. ¿Hay online de Star Wars? Hay online de Star Wars. No tenéis en español y creo que eso es un problema, porque la gente las quiere en español ya que es nuevo, ¿no? Esto es mucho más complicado, Rasolo, que eso, porque... A ver. Pasa lo siguiente, ¿no? Pasa que... tú tienes que tomar una decisión a largo plazo y la tienes que tomar hoy. Porque la tienes que tomar hoy, porque es ahora cuando sale el producto, ¿vale? Entonces, si trabajas 2 idiomas de un mismo producto de una manera profunda, necesitas más gente. Y el beneficio que te da trabajar 2 idiomas es menor que el trabajo y el beneficio que te genera solo tener un idioma, más que si alguien viene a venderte una carta en español, la tengas en español y ya está. Entonces, ¿qué pasa? Star Wars es un juego que tiene una fanbase, ok, de la hostia en español, pero también tiene una fanbase a nivel mundial en inglés. Esto es un juego de cartas coleccionables, entonces sí, habrá gente que coleccione el halcón milenario, pero va a haber gente que coleccione el Millennium Falcon. Me invento el nombre, no tengo ni puta idea de cómo se llama. Entonces, una vez que tomas la decisión, tú tienes que comitear a eso. Pero ante una colección pequeña, pero es que no es una colección pequeña. Es que tú ves una colección pequeña ahora, pero dentro de 3 años, Star Wars, ¿vas a seguir abriendo español e inglés? Yo lo que no quiero es ganar unos clientes ahora, porque tengo español, y perderlos dentro de un año, porque ya no tengo español. Y que ese cliente tenga una mala sensación, una sensación de que, no, es que no están... No están contando conmigo. Bueno, es que esto es lo que yo ofrezco. Yo, o sea, entiendo el haber abierto español de Star Wars. Lo entiendo. En mi cabeza entra la posibilidad de haber abierto español de Star Wars. Pero no es lo más óptimo. No se saben las próximas ediciones. No, sí. Se sabe que hay 4 ediciones por año. ¿A qué precio está bien comprar una caja? En Metropo las tenemos en oferta. Diría que a 100 euros. Pero no es real. El precio real son 120 euros. En Metropo creo que las tenemos en oferta a 100 euros. Sí, sí, o sea, ahora mismo el problema de Star Wars es Lorcana. O sea, Lorcana de que la peña se está masturbando con Lorcana, pero... Yo creo... O sea, si yo fuese lo de Amode no estaría preocupado. Porque Star Wars es mucho mejor juego, pero mucho mejor juego. Pero bueno, que ya veremos. Ya veremos. Volvemos a las mentiras. Entonces los 94 de Licar se está bien de precio, no con envío y todo. Hombre, joder, pues si el Licar las está vendiendo a 94, de locos. Es casi más barato de lo que me cuesta a mí como trabajador de Metrópolis. Eh... Joder, 94 euros en las cajas. Yes. Mil euritos. Mil euritos. $24 es normal el precio, ¿no? $24 es normal el precio, ¿no? $24 es normal el precio. 24 sobres es normal el precio. Pero Topper, ¿tú no estabas pobre? Ferrero, estamos a 2 días del día de Twitch. Que este mes se cobra Twitch. El mes que viene, el 15 de abril, sí que va a ser un mes de pobres. Ya le han volado las cajas. Hombre, yo todavía no se las he pagado. Las tengo en el carrito. Las voy a soltar. Que sí, una caja. Sí, sí. O sea, a ver, 100 euros. A mí, es que el precio. Es que lo han hecho muy bien. Es que lo han hecho muy bien. Es que lo han hecho de locos. Y la caja de 24. La caja de 24. 24 sobres. ¿Qué? La casualidad. 24. 24. Entre 3 sobres, que es un draft. 8. La casualidad. Te compras una caja y te puedes echar un draft con tus 8 amigos. La casualidad. Ah, pero es que no hay premios como en Magic. La casualidad. Te quieren vender la caja. Es que hay gente profesional trabajando aquí. Es que. Es que. Es que. Claro. Ay. ¿Asmodee para Star Wars es el Ravensburg para el Lorcana? Sí. Profesional, muy profesional, pues sí. Bueno, por favor, dejemos Star Wars. Que ya está. Que Star Wars Pepino lo han hecho todo de locos en un año. Juego organizado con GPS y la hostia. Circuito nacional y de todo. O sea, Star Wars lo va a petar. Un saludo. Amuletos de vigor. Haz promo de Lorcana también, porfa. Pero si es que, ¿qué coño voy a hacer de promo de Lorcana? Si es que no me gusta. Lorcana. ¿Dónde está la única carta que tengo de Lorcana? A ver si está por aquí. De Lorcana he comprado 4... Un mundo ideal. Un mundo ideal. Eso es todo lo que he comprado de Lorcana. No... Si es que no me apasiona el juego de Lorcana. Es que no me apasiona. ¿Pero eso es lo que tú te crees o es oficial? Sí, sí. Sí, 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 sí. Y Mundial de Star Wars. Lo que pasa es que, claro, en vez de llamarse Mundial, se llama Galáctico. Y los clasificatorios al Mundial Intergaláctico. Y el europeo Inter... no sé qué. No sé. Pepino. Star Wars es de frikis, eso es. Bueno, me voy a seguir lanzando Doughty Boy Walker, Croxas y Earthy Bowmasters. Uf, Rasolo, ahora que has dicho eso. Espera. Uf. Anoche por la... Anoche le entró la cagalera. No. Anoche Nerea dijo... me voy a poner a hacer tokens de Star Wars. Dios. Tan guapos. Los tokens de escudo, eh. Flipas. Es que esto de la impresora 3D... Esto de la impresora 3D es otra cosa, eh. Están pepinos, la verdad. Me iba a pillar los originales, o sea, los oficiales, pero yo qué sé. Es que yo creo que a mi novia le hará ilusión que juegue los suyos. Que me venda un pack. Habla con... Habla con ella. Habla con ella. A dos caras no se puede. A dos caras no se puede. El tema es que es mejor... Es mejor por colores, ¿no? No lo sé, ¿eh? Supongo que se podrá a dos caras. No lo sé, sinceramente, resuelvo. No soy experto imprimidor de 3D. Bueno, soy experto en nada. Experto en Gathering. Pero bueno. Eh... UR hemos dicho que no juego ni muerto. Y esto ya son dos doses. No me interesa nada de esto. Yes. ¿Esto qué pollas es? Bueno, esto lo vamos a hacer aquí, clickbait. Y quitamos lo del... Quitamos el resultado. Wild Notebooks Banner no problem. I'm having fun in estándar. 4-0 en el preliminar de tipo 2. Con el best deck en el formato. Galvanic Iteration y World Soul Rage, Hay gente diciéndolo, Hay gente diciéndolo, por cierto. Nosotros estamos vendiendo Nisas en Metropo como churros. Pero claro, es que si rota... De aquí rota todo, ¿no? El Splendid Reclamation rota. El Memory Deluxe rota. La Galvanic Iteration rota. Es que rota todo el mazo. Las fechas. Buenos días. Buenos días, Gonz. Una mierda. Vale. Vamos a ir al mercado americano. Ya está bien las listas. Mercado americano, a ver qué ha pasado. ¿Ha pasado algo? Memory Corp, 40 pavos, sí, claro. Memory Corp, 42 pavos, claro. Claro que sí, claro que sí, claro que sí. Pero esta mierda, tío. ¿Qué, tío? ¿Qué? Putos americanos. Tío, es que cuando se rompe el puto TCG Player, tío, es una mierda como un puto castillo. Hullbreaker Horror de Universes Beyond Fallout. A ver, ¿hay gente con dinero en el streaming ahora mismo? ¿Hay gente con dinero? ¿Hay gente con dinero calentito? Distrito 0, 285,95. O sea, 289. O sea, este precio es súper barato. Súper barato. Pero bueno. Que a lo que voy. A lo que voy. Flipa. Esta sí que no la vimos venir, Esta sí que no la vimos venir, Yo por lo menos esta no la vi venir. No, pero ¿por qué no me sale aquí esta mierda? Sellado. Vale. Flipas. Flipas. Brutísimo, 52 en todo Estados Unidos. $382. ¿Esto qué es? Esto, Ferrero, es Fallout. Es una colección de Magic que le encuentro. Hay 52 cajas de Collector en todo Estados Unidos. 52 cajas de Collector en todo Estados Unidos. Según TCG Player, en eBay he mirado ayer y había también unas cuantas. Pero las cajas de Collector. ¿Qué dices? Están drogados. Esta no la vimos venir, Esta yo por lo menos no la vi venir. Lo de que hubiese recortes de Fallout en Estados Unidos, yo no la vi venir. Es que falta dinero. Falta dinero para todo lo que hay que hacer. Todo el rato con el dinero. Pero bueno. Vale. Estamos. Vale. Universe Beyond. Saturday Pre, basura. Las Dráculas. Chrome Mox de doble master en Full Art. 200 pavos. Vale. Inteligencia Bubblehead. Ok. Best Impulse. Mindrak. Fog Crawler. Ah, esto es un vigor. Vale. Basura. Bueno, el Gorios. Subidita un poquito. Nuka-Cola. Rise of the Realms. Madeline Hex. Todo un meme, tío. Pero es que todo sin parar, eh. Uf. Esta subida. Uf, esta subida. Mm, Habrá que ver. Pequeña broma en la Gaia Cradle, eh. Necrositer sigue saliendo por ahí al bulto. Poi, 3000. Crisol de Mundos, un Juli Grotto, Rot Hulk. Uf, cómo le gusta a Ferrer el Rot Hulk este. Dios. Dios, basura. Shakashima. El Ponder grande chapao. Pero bueno, esto es por el tema del Sacred Lair. Puta mierda todo. Y en cuanto a las pérdidas de hoy. Hombre. Buena rentada, sí señor Ferre, así me gusta. Strong back. En las fracasadas, Ferre. Se podía saber eso. Bueno. Y en el market, ¿qué ha pasado? Han pasado cosas, pasan cosas, ocurren. Silver Road Costume. Nuka Cole Vending Machine. Botas de los pies ligeros. Muy bien. Leyline de la anticipación. La peña fumándosela, eh. La leyline del pacto de los gremios. De estas ayer vendimos unas cuantas en Metropo. Hmm. Vale. ¿Qué más había por ahí? Lista de ventas, no sé qué, línea, tal, Pick Your Poison, basura, los pavores demoníacos. Cotsrow, Handy Helper. Inspector Novato, Fajali. Hola Andrés. Un poco de todo, pero vamos, realmente aquí cartas que se vayan a jugar esta por la fumada. La Vending Machine quizá porque está siendo la carta más demandada, ¿no? De Fallout. Vale, Pues... Yo en principio ya estaría. ¿Alguien más que quiera decir cascada en el top 8 del LMS de Praga? ¿Cuántas mazos de cascada va a haber en el top? ¿Alguien que se quiera mojar? Mm. ¿Qué día era? Este fin de no, el que viene. La cosa es que... Callados. ¿Cómo hacer tu primer millón? Es como fuck. Mañana más, pues. Bueno, si no tiene nadie nada más que decir, chapamos, sí. ¿Hay alguien que vaya a ir al Interocio el sábado? Es más, ¿hay alguien que vaya a ir al Interocio el sábado, tenga entradas para lo de Star Wars y no vaya a jugar? Vale, pues eso es todo entonces. Qué drama. Me he dormido en los laureles. Pero bueno, no pasa nada. No se puede todo. Bueno, a ver quién está. ¿Está alguien? Para que podamos hacer raid. Twitch Magic, no. Twitch Magic, sí. Ah, no, espérate, pero si estos ayer estuvieron hablando. Oh, pues mira, pues así lo veo.
Announcement that we made yesterday. So we are going to talk about every format today, but there were only two formats that had changes yesterday. The first and most impactful was in Modern. Violent Outburst was banned, so those rhinos are going to have to wait to your turn to cascade onto the battlefield. And in Vintage, we unrestricted Ponder, Lorwyn favorite, is in the class of blue cantrips that sometimes get banned, sometimes get unrestricted, sometimes they're here or there, but they're always on top of our minds. So we're going to talk about those two bannings as well as the other formats with our two guests today. We've got Andrew Brown and Dan Musser here. Introduce yourselves real quick. Let's start with you, Andrew.
Sure. Hi, I'm Andrew Brown. I am a designer on the Magic design team, and I work on basically all of our sets, trying to make them sing nicely together.
And I'm Dan Musser. I manage the play design team in our design studio.
Yeah. So the way we're going to run this today is we're going to just have these two run through each of the major formats today, one by one. We'll discuss some things that we saw people talking about online, some points we wanted to emphasize from the article, and then we're going to take your questions. We'll go to Twitch chat once we get through all the formats, and we'll just answer questions from all of you until you run out. So why don't we kick things off with standard? We'll go kind of reverse order for size of the format. So standard, most recent, all the way down to vintage. So let's start with standard. No changes in standard, but how are you all viewing the standard format right now?
So right now we're keeping a close eye on the standard format. This is our, kind of fourth or so window for larger standard, where we actually introduce an extra year into standard. So we're keeping a big eye on that and how the larger size is affecting the format. Currently, we're seeing a lot of things that we like. We're also seeing some things we can improve on for our design process internally, and it's something we think about constantly.
Okay. Now, one of the things we talked about in the BNR announcement is that we've seen some growth in standard play. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, right now we're seeing a huge increase in our tabletop standard play across all disciplines. So starting from like standard showdown all the way to RCQs, we're seeing an increase in attendance, and we're really enjoying how much we see our local players kind of like starting to adopt the format. While that might not be true for every single store, we do see across the board that more entries are being had into these tournaments. So we still want to continue to support standard, and we're very happy with the growth so far. We're not done keeping it up.
Yeah. Now, can you talk a little bit more about, so this is where we're a little ways into the first 3 years standard.
Right.
How are you all viewing that change so far?
Yeah, so right now we really love the metagame that we're seeing. Really, you can pick up any sort of macro archetype that you like that starts with aggressive decks, mid-range decks, control decks. You might even
I like how you pointed at me when you said.
Yeah. Well, that was intentional. Anyways,
it's 100% what I'm playing in standard right now. Yep.
Las
but yeah,
chistecitas,
since we're seeing so much diversity
Chistecitas
at the
internas.
top and even on the arena ladder right now, we're super happy with how all of that is shaping up, and hopefully that continues into some of our.
Que no ha terminado.
Now,
Estoy viendo
can you
esto.
also, for people who weren't around when we made a bunch of the changes last year, talk a little bit more about the overall standard banning philosophy and timing?
Sure. So with a single ban window attached to every single set, one of the things that we set out to do with new standard is make sure that there's only really one change a year. So that change is going to be right before Bloomborough. That's if we make any changes. So that'll be in the summer, probably around the July or August timeframe. So generally with standard, we're only going to make one change per year, unless it's something kind of drastic, but we haven't seen anything like that so far.
Yeah. Now, that said, even given that philosophy, is standard in a place where, even with a lower threshold, would you have made any changes right now?
I don't think so. Given what I said recently, we're seeing a lot of different macro archetypes. We're seeing a lot of things represented. You can really pick up any sort of theme deck online. My favorite is Toxic, and just play on the arena ladder and have a great time.
Yeah. No, I've been playing a lot of standard lately. I've been playing blue-white control. I'm so happy that, you printed no more lies. Like, what am I going to do? But yeah, it's not, it felt like even just a few months ago, you'd often play against kind of the same 3 decks pretty consistently, and it just doesn't feel that way anymore. It feels like you're getting a variety of experiences.
Yeah, one of the things we're seeing right now is there's like a revolving door of 5 different decks kind of hopping to the top of the metagame, but
Básicamente está diciendo que estándar, ahora estamos en un estándar de 3 años, este estándar de 3 años no sabían bien cómo iba a reaccionar, los baneos solamente serán una vez al año después de julio, ha habido principalmente siempre 3 mazos hasta la salida de los asesinatos de la mansión en el top de mazos, y ahora mismo con la inclusión de los mazos de las cartas de MKM, el top 3 de mazos, digamos que se ha ampliado al top 5.
we're also seeing that they have bad matchups and they kind of go in and out between each other.
Que se van reajustando entre ellos.
If you have questions about standard, we will certainly come back to it in the Q&A section as you have questions. But let's move on and talk a little bit about Pioneer. I think outside
Vamos a hablar de
Modern,
Pioneer.
Pioneer was probably the most discussed, even though we had no changes. So talk a little bit about how you view Pioneer.
A ver,
Right
Pioneer.
on the heels of a Pioneer Pro Tour that, we saw metagame share numbers. We saw win rates and everything. Our great Frank Karsten posts all that stuff for the world and us to see. But the story of the event was really positive. Of course, there's going to be a deck that's in the lead with Phoenix. Is it Phoenix having the highest metagame share? But also there was a breakout deck for the tournament in Rakdos Vampires with
Vein Ripper.
Vein Ripper, yeah, from the brand new set. So it was really fun innovation to see. It took down the event. Congrats, Seth. And that's just a sign, in our opinion, that things are moving around. It's not super stale. You can take a breakout deck and win a tournament. You can play creature combo, aggro, the sort of tempo deck. There was
Vale, están diciendo que ellos tienen todos los datos del Pro Tour y que dicen que sí, que Pioneer, que obviamente Phoenix ha sido el mejor mazo y todo eso, pero que ha salido un mazo nuevo que es Vampiros con el Vein Reaper del nuevo set. Y que los mazos todavía se están adaptando, que los mazos suben, bajan, puedes coger cualquier mazo y a ver qué ocurre.
There's a bunch of blue-white control with your favorite No More Lies. And so there seems to be room for innovation, and that to us is a sign that things are in a pretty good spot. So we decided that for the way the Pro Tour looked in the upcoming RCQ season, we were interested in seeing what other innovations players can come up with. Does Rakdos Vampires take the lead? Do people find ways to come at that strategy, and how does that metagame evolve over the upcoming RCQ season?
Okay, let's talk about two decks in particular that people flagged as ones they were thinking about. Let's start with Amalia, not necessarily because of overrepresentation or overwinning, but because we saw in several instances draws on camera, which are traditionally not things we love.
It's just not a thing we see also, right? Like it's just not a common occurrence, and usually people draw because of time. It's also not fun to see on camera. But these kind of draws were, I guess, more intentional. You'd say intentional, right? So in Amalia, you have this combo where you have the namesake card, you have Wild Growth Walker, and you have a way to gain life or explore. And once you do that, Amalia starts ticking up and up and up until exactly 20. However, she's supposed to blow up the board at that point, other than herself. But if you use your Selfless Spirit and give your Wild Growth Walker indestructible, it's just going to keep going and draw the game because you can't get out of this loop. So that's not great, but it's something that the deck has that I would say, yes, we saw some on camera. It's not the most frequent play pattern out of the deck. The even more interesting dynamic is if Boros Heroic is something that grows in popularity, top 8, made second place, Simon Nielsen. They have spells that can either increase the power of Amalia to get past this lock point of exactly 20, or give the Wild Growth Walker indestructible as well, which will defensively have them draw the game as well. So it's interesting, but it's something we're keeping an eye on. We do want a creature combo deck to exist, a creature-based, permanent-based deck. That's a really healthy part of our metagame, we believe. This little draw thing is maybe not the best, but it's not completely at the level that we're needing to take action on it or anything. So
Yeah, that's something you're keeping.
Tía, esto sí me ha sorprendido, Esto sí me ha sorprendido, ¿Queremos un mazo de combo con bichos? El mazo que hay es Amalia. Si te gusta bien, y si no, pues te jodes. Y si hay empates, te jodes. Hostias. No sé. Somos conscientes, hay empates. Heroic va a hacer que empates. El mazo hace que empates. Sí. Es lo que queremos. Vale. Vale. Vale.
Keeping your eye on.
definitely we'll keep an eye on.
All right. The other archetype that people have flagged is Phoenix. In fact, the quickest written response yesterday was Luis Scott Vargas.
Yeah, he's fast.
It was very fast. Who made some comments about Phoenix and some changes he would have liked to see made. So talk a little bit about how you're viewing Phoenix right now.
Yeah, nice speed, Luis. You play and write both very fast. But yeah, so just going back to Amalia, it's only existed since LCI, which is what.
Vamos a leer el artículo de Scott Vargas. A ver qué dijo ayer el bueno de Luis Scott sobre la Fénix. Lo que me hubiera gustado ver, Treasure Cruise. This is by far the biggest miss for me. Esto es una de lo que más he echado de menos en el anuncio. IZ Phoenix ha hecho unos números brutales en el Pro Tour y continúa dominando. IZ fue el 18% del fiel y acabó con un 57.7 de win rate, lo que es cómicamente grande. Dejando ese win rate tan alto con muchos pilotos que son extremadamente difíciles de ganar. El deck no muestra señales de ser parable. Solo gasté un montón de tiempo jugando Pioneer y Phoenix. Creo que no es ideal. Phoenix hace cosas extremadamente bien. Busca lo que quiere encontrar debido a la cantidad de countries más Treasure Cruise. Deja a los mazos agresivos en la mierda jugando un montón de Lightning Bolts y espadas en guadañas. Gana las partidas largas porque juega Treasure Cruise. Y gana al hate lineal añadiendo cartas de banquillo que juegan alrededor del hate de cementerio. Básicamente Phoenix es resiliente, poderoso y a pesar de ser lineal se adapta de manera justa a las cartas que le hacen frente de hate. Un mazo como Lotus Field podría llegar a ganarle con cambios en el banquillo. Añadir de que no es divertido cuando tú ves que tu oponente roba 5 cartas en un turno y te bolt y te mata o te sube cualquier cosa que tú juegas. Creo que una acción debe ser tomada contra Phoenix. Sería el movimiento correcto. Las partidas no son de unas a otras y el diseño realmente hace que la gente salga del formato. Banear el Cruise o incluso el Arc Like Phoenix si no quieres tocar el Cruise hubiera sido mi solución. Creo que es una gran oportunidad desperdiciada no hacerlo. Ahora Phoenix continuará siendo el mejor mazo y más jugado y no veo ningún escenario and I don't see why y no creo y no sé por qué y no veo por qué ese escenario es en el que querríamos vivir. Yes. Podrías ponerlo en ChatGPT que te lo traduzca, pero lo hacen muy bien. Gracias, Elsic. Es muy bonito viniendo de ti, que estás todo el día traduciendo del español al catalán y del catalán al español en tu mente. Gracias, tío. Te lo agradezco, de verdad. Vale, entonces básicamente Vargas no está contento con que no hayan chapado ni el crucero ni el Fénix. Vale, seguimos, a ver qué dicen.
Very fast.
That's a really healthy part of our metagame, we believe. This little draw thing is maybe not the best, but it's not completely at the level that we're needing to take action on it or anything. So
yeah, that's something you're keeping your eye on.
Definitely we'll keep an eye on.
All right. The other archetype that people have flagged is Phoenix. In fact, the quickest written response yesterday was Luis Scott Vargas.
Yeah, he's fast.
It was very fast. Who made some comments about Phoenix and some changes he would have liked to see made. So talk a little bit about how you're viewing Phoenix right now.
Yeah, nice speed, Luis. You play and write both very fast. But yeah, so just going back to Amalia, it's only existed since LCI, which is 2 sets ago, and Phoenix has really only risen back from the ashes. We made this joke before.
Yep.
Since Woe, which is the set before that, Wilds of Eldraine. So with Sleight of Hand and Picklock Prankster, comes back up, and so it's not been years of dominance. It's always oscillated a little bit. It is the most played deck. It's probably the most obvious deck to take to PT. It's safe. It's got good matchups and bad matchups though. I don't think it did super well against the Rakdos Vampires deck. It's weaker against Amalia and Lotus Field combo. Boros Heroic I think has a good game against it. So it's not at a level yet. Yes, I mean it was the highest played deck at the Pro Tour. It had a great win rate. But this is one event. We made sizable changes last time. We got rid of Geological Appraiser, got rid of Karn, and we unbanned Smuggler's Copter. And we had one event, so one real big event to see how things shaped up. So will Phoenix stay on top? Maybe, but it's not the obvious alarming levels of like how Geological Appraiser was killing people, on turn 3 with 1 card. It's not the danger of something like that ruining. There's gameplay, there's back and forth. There are ways to try and hate it out. They do sidestep and sideboarding, but yeah, not quite time for us to pull the lever on acting on Pioneer. I think it's just exciting to wait and see how people adjust to the results of the Pro Tour and their RCQs.
Yeah. Well, it's a good reminder that we just had, like you said, a number of changes in Pioneer. I think one of the most interesting and successful was the unbanning of Smuggler's Copter, which showed up, but like even in the Rakdos Vampire, it was a 2-of. It often got sided out. Are you all pretty satisfied with how that went?
Yeah, it did win the tournament. That was exciting. But it wasn't to the levels of 4-ofs in a bunch of different decks. Yeah, it existing there was really sweet. It pumped in Soul Artifact decks up a little bit. We saw a couple of those on camera at the PT, and that was pretty fun. And it's in a smattering of other decks, but yeah, it seemed like it was a safe unban with the data we have now.
And one note I do want to make on just how we curate our formats in general is when we look at these Eternal formats.
Están muy contentos, ¿eh? Están muy contentos con el desbaneo del Slugland Copter, ¿eh? Que al final ha sido una carta justa, ¿eh? Muy contentos con el unban del Slugland Copter. Me gusta. La platea parece que lo está supliendo. Un saludo.
Formats that don't rotate, we often like to think of like the player archetype that we want to shoot those for.
Sure.
So when I think of a blue-red spells deck like Phoenix.
Joder, el cóctel de contrabandistas, que se me ha olvidado cómo es. Smugglers, pues Smugglers. Cóctelo del contrabandista.
And playing a lot of cantrips, sequencing your cards correctly. Like this is what we think that audience wants. Like they want those intricate gameplay, lots of cheap spells, lots of decisions. And to be frankly honest, Phoenix is.
Voy a volver, que no sé de qué está hablando ahora este.
How that went?
Yeah, it did win the tournament. That was exciting. But it wasn't to the levels of 4-ofs in a bunch of different decks. Yeah, it existing there was really sweet. It pumped in Soul Artifact decks up a little bit. We saw a couple of those on camera at the PT, and that was pretty fun. And it's in a smattering of other decks, but yeah, it seemed like it was a safe unban with the data we have now.
And one note I do want to make on just how we curate our formats in general is when we look at these Eternal formats that don't rotate, we often like to think of like the player archetype that we want to shoot those for.
Sure.
So when I think of a blue-red spells deck like Phoenix and playing a lot of cantrips, sequencing your cards correctly, like this is what we think that audience wants. Like they want those intricate gameplay, lots of cheap spells, lots of decisions. And to be frankly honest, Phoenix is honestly just a super fun card. So I know we talked about fun in kind of our last BNR update, and we view Phoenix as a very fun deck, but obviously we always keep in strength into front of mind. Fun is kind of always also there, but also just thinking about what does the player of this format enjoy and what does the player of this format want.
Okay. All right. Again, we'll come back to Pioneer as you all have questions, and I noted a couple in chat already. But let's move on to Modern, where we had the biggest change, which was banning violent outbursts. So talk a little bit about the goals there.
Yeah, so again, in Modern, we had a change during our last window with Fury up the Beanstalk. Part of the goal there was to take the black-red Evoke deck down a notch. By getting rid of Fury, we've seen the numbers go from in the 20s down to the single digits, which is great. That also reduces the number of other cards you're seeing from that deck. Cards like Grief, numbers in the metagame go down when that deck's metagame share goes down. So we kind of wanted a similar approach here. Teamer Rhinos or Rhino variants and Living End, especially combined, we're also getting up to that sort of metagame share level that the red-black deck was at. People are seeing it too much. And it's not that we wanted to remove the deck from the format, either of the Cascade decks. It's just that we wanted to reallocate sort of the power of the deck in terms of a pretty unsatisfying play pattern. Talking about fun and power at the same time, it's really strong when you can do stuff on your opponent's turn at their end step when they're like most vulnerable, and then untap with all your things. Not to mention there's an active counter and force of negation without paying any mana on your opponent's turn, where that's not true on your own turn. And so we just wanted to take out the least fun and probably most powerful angle of each of those decks to get the metagame share down a notch, but without removing them completely from the metagame.
Now that the ban hits 2 decks. It hits Living End and Rhinos. I know Rhinos was the target. Can you talk a little bit about how you view the damage to the Living End archetype as well?
Yeah, it wasn't just targeting Rhinos. Honestly, we were targeting Living End as well. It's won a few tournaments. You're seeing it in the top 8s of these regional championships as well. So it's no slouch by itself. It's definitely rising in metagame share, but it is not as present as Rhinos. But yeah, the fact that they can also defend their combo on their opponent's turn, but I think it's even less fun and less satisfying to have your board wrath on your own turn. You go to attack, all your creatures die because Living End comes out at instant speed, and now you're facing against 12 power or whatever they've cycled into their yard. So it is probably true that it hits the Living End deck a little bit harder, since that's such a strong play to be able to wrath on your opponent's turn. But both decks they can operate at sorcery speed. It's fine to put 12 to 8 power or 10 power into your board and wrath their board on your own turn. That's still pretty strong. And then you can use your Force of Negations to defend your creatures instead of the spell.
Now, some people did bring up a few other archetypes that they.
¿Cuántas veces ha dicho la palabra Force of Negation, tío? Voy a ver si Metropolis tiene Force of Negation. Igual es que hay que comprar más Force of Negations. A ver. Force of Negation. Pues sí, Metropo tiene Force of Negation, pero solo tiene foil. Qué raro, eh. Es raro, eh. Hemos vendido las normales, pero nos quedan las foils. Parece raro esto.
They had questions about how this affects. Probably the one most mentioned was Yawgmoth. How do you all view this in terms of the Yawgmoth archetype?
Yeah, so this is getting into sort of design and ban restriction philosophy that we try and adhere to. Yes, it is true that if you look at the current metagame and you look at which decks are favored against which, that A, Living End is strong against Rhinos, and Living End probably takes a bigger hit here. B, you have decks like Amulet and Yogg.
in terms of
Still
Aquí
free
pregunta
draw,
por la Jaummod, ¿no?
and then you can use your Force of Negations to defend your creatures instead of the spell.
now. Some people
Espérate, voy a por unos calcetines que me estoy helando los pies, tío.
did bring up a few other archetypes that they had questions about how this affects. Probably the one most mentioned was Yawgmoth. How do you all view this in terms of the Yawgmoth archetype?
Yeah, so this is getting into sort of design, ban restriction philosophy that we try and adhere to. Yes, it is true that if you look at the current metagame and you look at which decks are favored against which, that Living End is strong against Rhinos, and Living End probably takes a bigger hit here. B, you have decks like Amulet and Yawgmoth, as you mentioned, that are weak against Rhinos. And so when Rhinos goes down, those decks go up, and so now the top might look like Rhinos. Sorry, the top might look like Yawgmoth and Amulet. You can play that game, but every one of these little calculations, like if you go what the current metagame looks like and you remove something, it's fraught with like prediction error and confidence intervals, and it's just really tough to try and sort of like make a change, assume what's going to happen, and then make that change and knock that one down. And then what happens after that, it's like this big cascading effect of increasing error. And we're just not confident enough to make those kind of changes. We would rather see what the community does and what really happens in real life and sort of like prove it before you do it, kind of deal.
Right, because when you look at it on a larger scale, we are not capable of predicting out what everybody who plays Modern a ton, like thousands and thousands of games, we're not capable of predicting out what they're going to do once all of the chips fall, right? Mm-hmm. So if you keep stacking all these true if statements on top of each other, then if one of them isn't correct, then your entire house of cards kind of falls down, and then you're left with something that you're maybe not so happy with, right? Yeah. So when we make one change, it's a lot easier for us to kind of understand, hey, I think this could happen, I think that could happen, but the range of outcomes is kind of more measured. If you start making changes based on assumptions and other assumptions, you're really just going to get to a spot where it's like, I don't know what's going to happen, and we dislike that uncertainty, and we like being a little bit more calculated with all of our moves.
Makes sense. All right. Again, if you have more questions about Modern, we will come back to all of this in the Q&A section, but let's move on and talk about Legacy. So we had no changes in Legacy, but there are a couple things you're keeping your eyes on.
Yeah, we kind of said this last time we talked and in the previous article as well, but just keeping an eye mostly on the prevalence of Orcish Bowmasters. It's probably the top card. Now you look at...
ahora han dicho que no pueden tomar un montón de verdades basadas en los win rates, porque si uno de esas verdades es las que te asumes, ¿no? En plan, sí, porque si quitas Rhinos, ahora Jaummod y Amulet van a ser los mejores, no sé qué, y claro, si Amulet y Rhinos son los mejores, tienes que chapar también algo de quizá el amuleto, la Tolaria, o el Choros Cáliz, lo que sea. Claro, precisamente va de eso, de que como no pueden hacer falsa dicotomía, pues nos tenemos que comer Amulet otras season más.
Force of Will, Brainstorm, Daze, Wasteland. There's a lot Orcish kind of set.
But let's move on to talk about Legacy. So we had no changes in Legacy, but there are a couple things you're keeping your eyes on.
Yeah, we kind of said this last time we talked and in the previous article as well, but just keeping an eye mostly on the prevalence of Orcish Bowmasters. It's probably the top card. Now you look at what Legacy's about, right? Force of Will, Brainstorm, Daze, Wasteland. There's a lot of aspects of Legacy that is the reason why it's Legacy. They are the so-called pillars, and it'd be very unlikely we would take action against cards like those. But Bowmaster's a new breed, and it's not quite at the level of those other cards I just mentioned, but it's creeping up there. The nice part is not just like one deck that plays it. It's in a bunch of different, we'll call them again macro archetypes. It's in tempo decks, combo decks, control decks. It's in taxes decks. It's in a lot of different decks. Not every deck though. The nice thing is other decks still can win tournaments. We've seen lands, we've seen Doomsday, we've seen the new Goblins deck. which we'll get to in a second. We've seen, yeah, just it's nice. A lot of different decks can still win, even if, you know, of all these new cards, Bowmasters is still probably the most played. So yeah, it's just something we're keeping an eye on. It doesn't seem like, you know, we should be protecting blue. It's, you know, it's a nice anti-blue card, but which we probably aren't a very big fan of. But you know, it's hanging out right now, and so we're just going to keep an eye on it. I did mention the Goblins deck, which features the I don't even know.
First, explain the Goblins stickers thing for people who are not familiar with Legacy.
So yeah, if you're not familiar with Legacy, you could see this card on Magic Online, or you could see it in real life in Infinity. But there's a section of that set that we've made tournament legal, and some of those involve needing stickers to put on your card, which is pretty interesting. You know, we experimented with this. What if this was real life and this was legal? And you know, where can we push the bars here? So we made a card that said 3 mana, and you register a sticker deck for your tournament, and you randomize it, and you offer it to your opponent, and they cut it. And when you play a card that requires a sticker, you peel the top one off and add its characteristics to your card. And so the Goblin adds 4, 5, or 6 mana depending on what stickers you pulled. And so it's a 3 mana card that adds 4, 5, or 6 mana basically. And Magic Online, you roll a dice. Same deal though. So the problem we're hearing and seeing now that we're like getting pretty back into the thick of live tournaments is that, well, if you're just doing the Goblin thing and you're doing the sticker thing, it's great. It's fine. It's not great. It's fine. But if you're an opponent or you're going to a tournament, there's 2 things. You could either think, I want to bluff I have stickers in my deck, so they think I'm on Goblins, and so that's a, you know, high level move that probably not something we want in a lot of tournaments. And then, you know,
¡Dios! ¡Dios! Joder, ahora sí que me han hecho buscarlos. Voy a buscarlos. Voy a buscar los goblins ahora mismo. Voy a buscar los goblins ahora mismo. Estoy buscando los goblins. Los encontraré. Es que no voy a encontrar los putos goblins. Hay que saber dónde tengo los goblins estos hoy, tío. Hay que saber dónde están los goblins estos. Que pueden estar en cualquier puto lado, ¿eh? Están en cualquier sitio. Yo tengo un carpesano lleno de goblins. Suerte. Yo ojalá supiera dónde están. Fijaos que los vendió y no se acuerda. No me suena haber vendido los goblins estos. Podría ser, pero es que no me suena. De hecho, es que esto me suena ya de haberlo mirado. Ahora que he cogido un taco, suena ya haberlo mirado esto. Y esto está al rojo. ¿Esto qué coño es? Esto es... Joder. Hayas. Dios. Hay hayas aquí, ¿eh? Uf. Yo creo que la aprendiste en la MagicCon. Es que en la MagicCon esto no. De hecho, yo en la MagicCon no vendí cartas. Line-up stage. Pero bueno, es un drama siempre. Igual este fin de lo dedico a colocarme todas las putas cartas. ¡Coño! Mira que acaba de salir aquí. Joder. Así sí, ¿eh? Hoy comemos carne. Hoy comemos carne, sí. No sé si... No sé si Metropolis me la comprará, pero ojalá me la compre. Pues sí, yo creo.
Have no stickers in your deck. You just presented the deck to.
No, están perdidísimos los goblins estos. A ver si este fin de sacamos un poco de tiempo. De Modern que han dicho estos tres del vídeo. Que no pueden...
Fake it. Or you have a legitimate reason and you're running cards like Phyrexian Metamorph or Phantasmal Image, and one of the better cards to copy is probably the card that makes 6 mana. And if you don't bring a sticker deck, you can't get the ability, so you need to bring the Goblins sticker deck, even though you don't have any Goblins in your deck in case you play against it. Neither of these things are ideal. And so we're aware of it. It's an in-paper issue only, it's not a Magic Online issue, but it's something that we're currently in search of a solution for. And we don't have an answer for it right now, but I think we can promise that by the next window we'll have a solution.
All right. Let's.
Esto es interesante, ¿no? Lo del Goblin, ojo, ¿eh?
let's then move on to Vintage, where we had the other change with where we were the good guys for once and we unbanned a blue card. But talk a little bit about unbanning Ponder.
Yeah, so
Unrestricting Ponder.
Unrestricting Ponder.
yeah. We'll make a little joke there because I did write in the article on
Just want to make sure that like community.
we were looking for an opportunity for spells, more spell-based decks. Which is a shocking thing to say. Something like, do we want Doomsday to be the best combo deck? I'm not saying that's exactly true, but in general, spells, big epic storm stuff has seen a decline in Vintage, and so giving it one of the most powerful one mana, cantrips, replacement cards might inject some life into those archetypes.
All right. We are going to move now into the Q&A section. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in chat. It helps me a little bit if you tag @magic just at the start of your question. That'll help me identify them as we go through chat, just like the person who admired your shoes.
Oh, nice shoes, Dan.
Nice shoes. So yeah, if you have a question, please do tag @magic. That'll just make it easier for me to grab them. I did grab a couple questions before that, and we're going to transition into one of them because we were just talking about unbans. So maybe there were a bunch of questions about we need more unbans, blah, blah, blah. Could you all talk about your philosophy around unbannings?
Sure. So like Dan said, we're always reading and listening to the community on what they think are appropriate unbans for us to kind of release some of these old cards from the vault back into the environment. But it kind of goes back to what I was saying in terms of, stacking a bunch of assumptions on top of each other. So when we make a change in a format, we're unlikely to unban also a card in that format as well. And generally, we're going to try and kind of pair a lot of bigger changes all at once. So if we see an opportunity to make a change in one format, we'll also examine another format to say, like, hey, is it actually okay for us to do this at that time? And also, like, if we're feeling really good about most formats and there's really not much going on, an unban is not exactly what we're kind of looking for. We always want to make sure that like we're making more changes in piecemeal. We don't want everybody to kind of have to like constantly upkeep every single time with every single format evolution. So there's some credence to kind of staying the course, being very selective with unbans, and kind of like playing them as a group instead of all these like random one-off timings where it's like, oh, this is legal now, that's legal now.
All right. The unbanning discussion provoked a bunch of sub-questions. So we'll just run through these quickly. Unban Twin.
We talked about this last time.
We did.
I did.
We're going to talk about it every time.
I said it's okay. Yes, I understand, and even in this article, right, I said there was a card ban in 2008, and we're finally letting it loose 14, 16 years later. Times have changed. Magic has changed. It's different now. Some things are probably there that don't need to be there, and we're looking for those things. But I believe, I can speak for most of our team, that we are pretty resistant to freeing the twin. It's just, I know cards are stronger now, but that really tight squeeze of that 3 mana, 4 mana turn where you can no longer tap out, but technically you're supposed to make them have it, but it's just really not ideal. So yeah, I mean, is there a day where it happens? Perhaps. Never say never. Don't hold your breath.
One other point there, like, if you read some of our logic in the last BNR update and kind of what we've already talked about today, where we talked about the unhealthy play pattern with rhinos and violent outbursts, end step on your opponent's turn and then untapping and essentially winning, you can just kind of predict that forward with Splinter Twin. You kind of read between the lines of what we think is actually fun or a healthy play pattern to promote.
Yep. We won't go through all of the unban requests because I think everyone's having a little fun with it now. But there was one that's come up a couple times that I'll throw out there. What about GT?
Yeah,
you want to take that one?
Yeah. So it is something, we do talk about all the cards. I asked the question to our team, sort of every time, is there anything, can anyone make an argument for any particular card? And, we came up with Ponder in Vintage this time around. But GT, or however you like to pronounce it, sits in this like, yeah, Stoneforge Mystic is legal, so there's a potential here. But man, it's a massacre when it gets into play. It's not like the modern, we're talking about modern, obviously,
yeah.
Just in case. The hammer deck that has Stoneforge and all that good stuff isn't like popping off or anything anymore. But sort of the reason why we still stand by the Fury ban is just the over aggression towards creatures and how much that keeps them at bay. And this would kind of do the same thing. Perhaps it's unclear to me if they're both in the same vein in my mind, where they're gonna just say don't play a lot of low toughness creatures. I know we still have some of that. There's always gonna be stuff that does 1 damage. We have Ren, we have Bowmasters, but yeah, I think that GT is on another level, at least for now.
Yep. It certainly wouldn't help the small creatures.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not like we want, like, it's really dangerous to try and, like, oh, but maybe you can take away one card and place the other card. Like, we've heard the conversation around, like, Green Sun Zenith and Dryad Arbor, like, you can take one or the other
Yeah.
and bring one back. But that's just a dangerous swap to, like, do on low confidence. You're making a guess, you're changing people's collections, right? Just for a swap, like, I don't know if that's the right way to approach things.
All right. Let's now go to probably the other most asked question. There have been a lot of questions about arena formats. So we pretty much stuck to, obviously, some of these have standards is on arena. Pioneer has an arena almost equivalent in Explorer. But, you know, we didn't talk about timeless. We didn't talk about historic. You want to talk about that relationship with the arena formats and philosophy there?
Yeah, so for, you know, standard, obviously, for Pioneer, Explorer, Pioneer-like format. Arena works with us, then, you know, whatever we want for the paper formats, they're happy to enact on Arena. For historic and timeless, it's kind of the ball's in Arena's court, and they'll sometimes consult with some of us that play those formats. But it's not a, you know, game design studio decision. It's as they need to change things for the health of their formats, and I'm sure they're tracking all that and looking at metagame data just like we are,
Right.
To figure out what decisions they want to make.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, there were a few call-outs for show and tell was a recent introduction to the timeless format that a few people have pointed to. It's very strong, but I actually play a lot of timeless. I think show and tell is fine. It's obviously very strong.
It's also blue.
It's also blue. I don't play it though. I play decks that stop it.
Yeah, it's a really strong format. It's really cool. You can necro, you can do all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
And as we get more cool cards like show and tell on there, you know, maybe there's a longer viewed plan, right? You know, what more can we get on there?
All right. Going back to Amalia combo, the question has been asked a couple different ways, but if the problem is the draws, intentional or unintentional, has there been any discussion of either functional errata or tournament rules to try to solve that rather than through bannings?
That's a great question. I think bannings we're more interested in than erratas. We'd like your cards to do what they say they do more often than anything else. You know, sometimes we have to do that. We feel like that's the right choice. We can look back at companions. But yeah, for the most part, we'd rather remove something from a format than change the words on the card, and your card doesn't do what it says it does anymore.
All right. Here was a question I spotted earlier. So on the modern change, why act now? Why not wait until Modern Horizons 3 to make any changes to modern?
Yeah, so I think we didn't necessarily have to act now, but you know, we want players to have fun for the next how many months? 4 months?
2 months.
It's only 2 months?
Till the next BNR, yeah.
Oh, till the next BNR.
Yeah. It's like 3 months till the release of Modern Horizons.
Yeah, I thought we were going with
Yeah.
when
Yes.
Modern Horizons. Yeah, just to get the metagame in a healthier place. We're always trying to nudge it into the right direction. You know, it's unclear exactly what effect Modern Horizons 3 will have on the format. But we want you to have fun playing it going into that. So we saw an opportunity here and wanted to make a change.
All right. There have been a few questions in this vein about different cards, and we've mentioned it a few points. Can you talk a little bit more about what you view as negative play patterns and how those play into your decisions?
You want to take that one?
Sure. So I think it's key to kind of think about which format you're talking about in terms of when you're thinking about negative play patterns. And it's definitely a sliding scale. So with standard, we're always going to be the most harsh on negative, or something that we would assume is like a negative play pattern that's definitely a lot less fun for the opponent than for the player. And it just kind of goes down. So like standard, we're going to be very strict with it. Pioneer, less so. Modern, less so. Legacy, less so. You play Wasteland, you kill their lands.
Yeah.
And Vintage, absolutely zero.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of what I was saying earlier, where it's like we are designing to the player of that format, and we try and think of what they like, what they dislike. So we're definitely going to be harsher on more accessible formats like standard, and obviously less so with older formats with more established play patterns like blowing up their lands every turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, killing someone on their end step or resolving one card to win the game. These are pretty negative play patterns. There's not a lot of decisions. There's not a lot of points of interaction. We really do like multiple points of interactions. You know, there's instance for a reason in this game. There's activated abilities. There's things you can do on each other's turns in this game and respond to each other. And that's part of what makes Magic really great, is this interaction between the two players. And when that gets really low, that starts to approach what I think we could call a negative play pattern.
Right.
All right. So I do see a number of questions about certain cards coming to Mitgo, certain cards not. We can't speak to any particular set of cards coming to Mitgo, but I think you discussed some of that, your desire to make sure that the Mitgo legacy format and the paper legacy format are as close as possible.
Yeah, as close as possible, but yeah, like you said, there's some differences. That's sort of always been true.
Yeah.
Not every card that's been in Legacy has always been on Magic Online, and that gets less true as we make more of these sets. But it is our goal, and we'd like that to happen as much as possible. In regards to the sticker card, at least, I think whatever change we make in paper will be reflected online. We want them to match as much as possible.
All right. Okay. We've asked about some cards on unbanning. We'll do a little lightning round on a few cards. People are pointing out that, should we ban this?
Let's go.
I'm just going to kind of go no particular order. How do you feel about the Guild Pack Leyline? Do you think it's too strong in Modern with Scion and Leyline binding?
I think we just haven't seen enough data on that card yet. There hasn't been a premier Modern tournament since the release of Murders, and like Dan said, we're just going to continue to monitor the situation, and with a card so new like that, we want to understand all of its effects that it has on the format before we're going to take action against anything like that.
Yeah, it did well at the very end of the RC season. I think we saw it in Denver, and so there's definitely some data. I mean, obviously, you can see it playing on Magic Online, but yeah, it's the fact that, and we'll see what happens with this ban, right? Because Team of Rhinos was a deck you could play that in. You could also play it in normal Zoo. But even before that, it hadn't quite fully caught on. The deck is more powerful. Like the ceiling is higher, but it's less consistent, right? Because sometimes you don't have Leyline, sometimes you do. You have Leyline and no Draco. So yeah, it seems like the opinion isn't quite fully formed to make it one deck or the other deck, and I think at that point we should just let people figure it out.
And sometimes you draw it in your draw step. Would not recommend.
No, that's not a great place to draw that card. Okay, I actually want to, in response to the Golgari Grave Troll comments, I want to actually pivot a little bit and ask this question. What has been the biggest banning, unbanning mistake made in the past?
I mean, that one's up there, right? Like
Yeah.
that's one of the egg on the face moments.
Curd Ape and Extended.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I just say that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, for people that don't know, right, we unbanned Golgari Grave Troll because it was banned for a long time, and then about 3 months later, Dredge was so powerful that we had to reban it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's a little bit of egg on the face. That's something we try not to do. That's why we try to make part of what that does, right? Oh, it's unbanned. This is so cool. You go and you trade your cards for the deck. You try and build it, and then we rip the rug right under your feet, right? And say, oh, sorry, we made a mistake. We need to ban that again.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you traded all your cards.
Well, and also you probably experienced a bunch of joy by winning a bunch of tournaments with that deck in the interim, and I think that speaks to why also that one was a bit of a lesson in unbanning cards
Right.
too.
Yeah, we're pretty cautious. I mean, you've seen us pick up some steam lately. Blue cantrips somehow have gotten back on the menu, but yeah, like I say in the article, we're not going to just try and make the list as small as possible. We're going to be really careful with our unbanning decisions because we don't want to, we don't want to ruin your collection again.
Yeah. The goal is definitely not to keep the list as small as possible. The goal is always to make the formats as fun as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the last three worked out. Well, sorry, we don't know if Ponder's going to work out, but the Preordain and some other copters one have seemed to work out so far.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, I think you have to, if you're asking about the biggest mistakes in BNR, like Curd Ape was a while ago, but we can also, if we want to go back that far, we can talk about Juggernaut.
Oh yes, the 5/3 for 4 mana.
Yes, that died
yes.
to Lightning Bolt and Sword Plowshares and everything else in the
It
format.
had to attack, right?
It had to attack. Not.
Oh yes,
If you're asking about the biggest mistakes in BNR, Curd Ape was a while ago, but we can also, if we want to go back that far, we can talk about Juggernaut.
oh yes, the 5/3 for 4 mana.
Yes, that died
yes.
to Lightning Bolt and Sword Plowshares and everything else in the
It
format.
had to attack, right?
It had to attack.
Yeah, it can't be
Yeah.
blocked by walls.
Can't
It
be
is-
blocked by walls. How
It
to
is
stop
getting
it.
in there.
Dingus Egg was one of my favorite.
I can't believe that.
Your
Dingus Egg,
invitational card?
my invitational card, thank you. For those who don't know, 4 mana artifact. When the land goes to the graveyard, you take 2 damage.
Yeah, good against fetch lands.
Yeah, good against 2 damage. Yes, I suppose it is good against fetch lands, which didn't exist at the time it was restricted. What else? Ollie from Cairo.
Yeah, your life total can't be reduced to less than 1.
Yeah,
Is that what it is?
it's
Yeah.
a 4 mana 0/1 creature.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyway, the old days are replete with, they were doing the best they could with different amounts of
Different times.
information. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Where else? We're gonna go on a tangent. This is somewhat of an. I'm trying not to just go into unban this, ban this, unban this, but this one is semi-interesting given that we printed a number of artifact lands in recent years, like the treasure one, and I think another one. Anyway,
Crime Scene from
Crime Scene is an artifact land. How do you all feel about the original artifact lands being still banned in Modern?
So a lot of that just comes down to density and the fact that they can produce colored mana. So if you look at the ones that we've recently printed, they always print colorless mana or they'll enter the battlefield tapped. And if you can actually fill your deck with only artifact lands, the starts you can have are a lot more explosive, and given the fact that they can produce colored mana, unlocks your ability to play a bunch of different colors. So while we do like printing artifact lands at a slow drip with a lot of restrictions around them, I think it's probably unlikely we'll ever unban the Ancient Dens, Seed of the Synods.
Yeah, like Andrew said, it's a density problem. Like it would probably be reasonable to take one off, or maybe two. But at that point, it looks just very strange. Also, like why are some of these banned and some not? And I think our course of action is just we'll make a few new ones every once in a while, and you can play with those ones instead.
All right. I think most of the questions, and I apologize if I'm missing something. I think most of the questions that I'm seeing now are either things we've already answered or things we just don't have anything to share on. So I think that is going to do it for now. So thank you to Andrew and Dan for sharing their thoughts on the BNR announcement. Our next one, as we said in the announcement, is going to be May 13th, and we'll do a show very much like this the day after, again, to talk through all the formats and all of that sort of stuff. Reminder, next week we will have Billy Jensen and Kyle Knudsen on the show to talk about Arena Premier Play with a little bit of tabletop Premier Play. Most of our focus is going to be on Arena. And then
casi todo lo de la arena. Muy bien, pues nada, hasta aquí hemos llegado hoy. Muchísimas gracias a los 80 que os habéis quedado hasta aquí. Nos vemos mañana 9 de la mañana. Nos vemos en 23 horas. No creo que este streaming se haga solo. Yo creo que tampoco. No creo. No me suena. Bueno, nos vemos. Chao, 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 chao.